Hi guys, welcome to another video. So the other day I decided to spend the princely sum of £16 on a sightseeing tour of York and thought, why not take you with me? So grab yourself a drink, a snack and sit back and enjoy the ride. Let's go. So this is the route we'll be taking. Starting here at Exhibition Square.
On the right, you can see some of the buildings have bricked up windows on the first floor. This comes from the Georgian window tax. In 1696, a law was passed on which owners were taxed on the amount of windows their property had. To avoid paying this tax, windows were bricked up. These days, when something is expensive, you'll hear people say, "That's daylight robbery." It is possible this saying comes from the old tax. You either paid up or lost your daylight, hence daylight robbery. In Lord Mayor's Walk, look to the right and we will get a nice view along the city walls. You can still see the defensive moat at the foot of the walls. This once would have been full of filthy water and rotting waste. Behind the wall, to the right, you can see York Minster, or to give it its proper title, the Cathedral and Metropolitical Church of St. Peter in York. It is both a minster and a cathedral. The name Minster derives from the Latin monasterium. From here, the local monks would go out to teach or minister. It is also a cathedral because it contains the throne of a bishop. This is taken from the Latin cathedra and means seat. In York's case, the seat of an archbishop. Keep looking on your right, and as we turn, you will see Monk Bar, which is the tallest of York's gateways, standing at 63 feet, or 19.2 metres in height. On the top stand life-size stone figures known as the Wild Men of York. Legend says they will come alive and throw their boulders down onto anybody daring enough to attack the city. We are moving into Foss Bank and running alongside York's second river, the Foss, on our left. It probably gets its name from the Latin word fossa, which means ditch or stream. There is no longer any commercial river traffic on the Foss, which was made into a canal in 1792. Today, both the Ouse and the Foss are mainly used by pleasure boats and wildlife. Looking to the right is Sainsbury's supermarket. In the 1980s, when this was being built, workmen unearthed hundreds of skeletons here. Work was stopped, and an investigation found this site to be the largest Jewish burial site outside of London, dating back to 1177. The chief rabbi was called in, the land was consecrated and declared sacred, and the bodies were left in peace. This area is known as Dewberry, which means Jewish borough or town. This is our nearest stop for York's most famous street, the Shambles, the medieval cobbled street of the butchers, the market, the city centre shops, and the Merchant Adventurers Hall. Please alight here for any of these places. Street. The Shambles probably gets its name from an old Danish word, fleshamels, which means the street of the butchers. The flesh was the meat, and the shamel was a large window ledge outside the shop where meat would be displayed. As we move into a relatively modern street, Clifford Street, on the right, the York Dungeon is housed in the grand old Victorian Institute of Learning. It tells the grisly side of York's history, recalling tales of torture and misery, and stories of characters such as Dick Turpin and Guy Fawkes. We are now moving into Tower Street. The structure on top of the mound is called Clifford's Tower and is the keep. You can walk around the top of the tower and get really good views across York. The tower is looked after by English Heritage, and there is an admission charge to go inside. The reason you can get good views is that the tower's roof is missing. It was there until St. George's Day 1684, when a gun salute went spectacularly wrong. The soldiers managed to set fire to the gunpowder store as well as the cannons. The resulting explosion blew the roof completely off the castle. However, nobody was killed. Legend says that the guard who was on duty on the top was later found swimming in the moat. The castle was closed down shortly after. Building on our left, it used to be the Assize Courts. These days it is the Crown Court. As we pass by, you can see the bars on the cell windows. Those on trial here are still held in the same cells the offenders were held in over 200 years ago. This is due to the building being a Grade 1 listed property, so it cannot be altered inside or out. On the left you can see the last remaining section of the castle wall. Look left as we pass the circular drum tower, and you can see where the drawbridge would have been at the base of the wall. Over the hedge to our left is the graveyard of St George's Church, which has just one upstanding headstone in it. Those on the bottom deck may see this headstone through the gates on the left as we turn. This is the grave of Dick Turpin, the notorious Georgian highwayman who robbed stagecoaches in the 18th century. On the left is St George's Roman Catholic Church, which was built in 1850 for the Irish settlers who arrived in this area during the Irish potato famine. The church replaced an earlier one and was temporarily the Catholic Cathedral of York. It was designed by the architect Joseph Hansom, who also designed the Hansom cab, a horse-drawn vehicle which was very popular in Victorian times. An example of a Hansom cab can be seen in the Castle Museum. We move on to Skeldergate Bridge and cross the River Ouse, York's main river. Look to your right to see Ouse Bridge, the oldest of the bridges built in 1821, replacing various older bridges dating back to Viking times. Look to your right and you will see the city walls at Bale Hill, the grass mound with trees growing on it. Bale Hill was the site of William the Conqueror's second castle, dating to around 1068. Nothing remains of it, however, because it was only ever made of wood, and nobody wanted to pay for its upkeep. Eventually, it was found to be in such a sad state of repair, it was pulled down. The two main chocolate makers in York were Terry's, who started making chocolate in 1767, and later Rowntree's, who had opened a grocer's shop in the centre of York in 1822. In Camplesham Road, we pass a modern housing estate known as the Chocolate Works, which gives a clue to what was in this area. Behind the buildings on the left, we can see a brief sight of what remains of the Terry's chocolate factory. Sadly, Terry's no longer makes chocolate here in York. The factory was closed down in 2005 and production was moved elsewhere. Its most famous product, the chocolate orange, is now made in Europe. The chocolate orange has become very much a part of Christmas tradition in this country. A survey has revealed that a Terry's chocolate orange finds its way into 1 in 10 Christmas stockings. Terry's was thought to be the first chocolate manufacturer of an assorted box of chocolates, which of course became known as Terry's All Gold. If you look through the trees on the left at the clock tower, can you spot what's strange about it? It has no numbers on the clock face, just the letters spelling the words Terry York, a reminder of over 200 years of chocolate making in this city. Ahead of us is York Racecourse, the home of horse racing here in York. There has been horse racing in York since Roman times, and racing has taken place on this area of land, known as the Knavesmire, since 1730. The Knavesmire may get its name from a knave, a common servant allowed to use this area for leisure and for grazing animals, and mire, a boggy area of land, which it still is to this day. The Knavesmire wasn't just used for horse racing, but other entertainments also took place here. It was common to see bare-knuckle boxing, bear baiting, and cockfights here. The most popular spectator sport, however, were the hangings, which took place here from 1379 right up until 1801. People would come from far and wide to see villains hang at the Tyburn. The most notorious person to be hanged at the Tyburn was none other than Dick Turpin, the highway robber who was executed here on the 7th of April, 1739. Today, the Knavesmire holds around 15 days of horse racing a year, the highlight of which is the Ebor Festival that takes place in August. York Racecourse also had the honour of hosting Royal Ascot in 2005, whilst the Ascot course was being renovated. In 1982, when the late Pope John Paul II visited the United Kingdom, it was the first time a reigning pope had visited this country. He came to the racecourse here in York and gave mass to over 200,000 people. The Knavesmire is also used for music concerts, circuses, fairs, and has been the home to the largest beer festival in the north of England on many occasions. Underground. Romans used to bury their dead alongside main roads, outside their settlements, possibly because they thought the dead would like to hear the sounds of the living going on with their daily lives. There are hundreds of such burials in this area. In 2004, the remains of around 80 people were discovered during building work in the Mount area, in the garden of a former 18th century mansion. The skeletons are probably those of professional fighters who fought and died for the entertainment of the ruling Romans. Almost all the corpses are of robust young males, many of whom met their death by decapitation between the late 1st and 4th centuries AD. Archaeologists initially suspected that the skeletons were those of Roman soldiers who were loyal to the Emperor Severus. He died at York in 211 AD, and his ruthless son, Caracalla, might have had the soldiers killed if they had tried to stop him from seizing power. In 2014, researchers from the York Archaeological Trust, who were leading the investigation, announced tantalizing evidence that the men were possibly gladiators brought to Britain from across the Mediterranean. They would have fought in an amphitheatre which is yet to be found. Looking ahead, you will see Micklegate Bar. This is one of the 4 main gateways into the city of York. Micklegate's name comes from Mickleth, meaning Great Street, and it is said to be the front door to York. It is also known as the Royal Entrance, as it is the custom for every monarch who visits York to ask permission of the Lord Mayor to be allowed into the city through this gateway. Every monarch has done this except for 2. Henry VIII, who on his second visit didn't go through the ceremony allowing him into the city, and Queen Victoria. We are now moving into Queen Street. Ahead of us is York's modern railway station, opened in 1877, when it claimed to be the largest railway station in the world. It is no longer the largest, but is still an amazing piece of architecture, having been built on a long curve. The first permanent station was built down to our right inside the walls. The large arches were knocked through the walls to allow the trains into the station in 1841. The trains would go through the arches and then have to sweep left to the old station inside the walls. It wasn't very practical, as once you got the train in there, it then had to be turned around to get back out, and this proved to be problematic. It would have been fine if it was only 1 or 2 trains a day, but York was becoming a very busy station, which soon saw over 300 trains a day coming to York. The new station was built to alleviate this problem in 1877. And move on to Lendal Bridge, which was opened in 1861, but it collapsed and wasn't reopened until 1863. It crosses the River Ouse, York's main river, which takes its name from the Celtic or pre-Celtic Oudsos, and probably means simply water or slow-flowing river. On the right, facing onto the river, is the Guild Hall. Originally, it was built in 1445 for the Guild of St Christopher and St George and the Corporation, but the structure you see today is mainly a modern reconstruction after the building was badly damaged during the Baedeker air raids in the Second World War. In the gardens to our left, you will find the ruins of St Mary's Abbey, once the largest and richest Benedictine abbey in the north of England. It was pulled down by Henry VIII's men in the dissolution of the monasteries in the 1500s. Also, you will see some of the Roman fortress wall and the Multangular Tower, as well as the remains of St Leonard's Hospital, which was closed in 1539. The hospital's main function was to care for the sick, the poor, the old and the infirm. The garden also houses the Yorkshire Museum, the jewel in York's crown and the largest Gothic cathedral in Northern Europe. This present building took 252 years to complete. It was started in 1220 and not finished off until 1472. We say it's complete, but in actual fact the central tower should have a spire, about another 32 metres or 100 feet in height on the top, but the weight of the spire would have collapsed the central tower, so it was never built. The minster has 128 stained glass windows containing over 3 million pieces of glass. On the right is York Theatre Royal, which was built in 1744 on and among the site of the medieval St Leonard's Hospital. It has undergone several refurbishments. The one in 1880 replaced the front of the building with this Victorian look, which some say is because the man who designed it didn't particularly like York. This brings us into Exhibition Square. This is the nearest stop for York Minster, the Art Gallery, King's Manor, Bootham Bar, and the nicest section of the city wall, as well as the Visit York Information Centre. Thank you to anyone leaving us at this point. We hope that you have enjoyed your tour with York City sightseeing.
So that was the hop on, hop off sightseeing tour of York. What do you think? Quite an education, eh? So anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.